Welcome back, friends. We are about to reach our cruising altitude. Let's jump into the cockpit. We are about to hear the altitude call, which tells me that we are 1,000 feet away from our selected altitude of 43,000 feet. Here in a second. And when we reach cruise, we will continue with the cruise checklist, and then we will talk about some features of the PFD and MFD, and also how we are going to plan our descent, what we are going to use for descent. As you heard, it was the altitude call, and it started flashing telling us that we are 1,000 feet away from our altitude. And the white text over here, as you see, Alt S, is telling us that selected altitude is armed, and the aircraft will hold that selected altitude when it reaches that altitude. Alright, we have a very strong crosswind. I kept the anti-ice systems on during climb all the way to the cruise, and we are about to hit our cruise level. We haven't still selected our arrival and approach. We will do that after going through the checklist. Let me synchronize the heading one more time. I like to keep heading synchronized just in case if anything goes wrong I can switch to the heading mode and fly it like that. So that is why I keep doing it. 500 feet away from our selected altitude. I think we can now bring the checklist because we are about to reach the cruise level. So the throttles, we will worry about that. Actually, what we want to do is, you will see a red zone on the speed tape, and we want to keep the aircraft as close as possible to the red zone while cruising, so that we don't lose time during cruise in terms of flight time. This might be a real world thing where you have announced that this is a 2-hour flight, but because of how you manage the throttle, makes it a 2-hour 30-minute flight maybe. So that is for that purpose. Airliners usually take care of this automatically because they have auto throttle. This aircraft doesn't have it, so we have to manage the throttle ourselves. So we are almost at cruise level, 50 feet more, and then the aircraft will start speeding because of the throttle. And as you see, the altitude S or Alt S mode is now active, telling us that it is going to hold 43,000 feet until we tell it something different. So we started to speed up. I'll keep the throttle like at climb detent until we see the red tape, and we will manage the throttle. And as you see, the red zone on the speed tape started to show. We'll select that, and we will assume that we are going to manage it. Pressurization is not possible or not modeled. We will assume that it is okay. Ice protection systems, I think we can now turn them off and leave the pillow heat on because we are at cruise level and there are no clouds or no humidity outside. And then that completes the cruise checklist. So the descent checklist, we will worry about that after we plan our descent. Let's start talking about it. And as we talk, I have to keep an eye on the speed to make sure it's not going to overspeed. Let's go down to the FMC while keeping an eye on the speed time to time. So we have to select our arrival now. And according to our Simbury flight plan, our arrival is to runway 6 or 16, runway 16, I'm sorry, or runway 16, and we are planning to do an ILS approach to runway 16. And our standard terminal arrival route is going to be bags 1 kilo. We'll select that. And our transition, you don't have to select the transition, but I'm going to select care of. And if we go to the plan mode, which I believe is this, yes, and if we zoom out just a tiny bit, and let me check the speed real quick, because yep, let's zoom out like so. The speed is still looking good, we are good. what I want to do is I want to go to the MFD Advanced and cycle through the waypoints to see how it is going to look like, and it rolls us back to the first waypoint most often. Keep cycling and you will get back to the current waypoint. And Kero I see there as the transition, which we can select, otherwise it will go around here. So let's go and select this and see how it changes. As you see now, it changed to taking us through here, making the turn into the runway. So I'm happy with this, and according to the charts and Navigraph, this is a valid transition. So I will select and execute this. Now in the plan mode, we should see, if I zoom in a little bit and go to MFD Advanced and go to the next waypoint, so BAGSO, and I see a disconnection here, so there is a discontinuity. The aircraft doesn't know how to get from BAGSO to ADSYS. And then after Kero, I see another discontinuity. So let's go to the legs page and see if we can clear those out. See, there's a discontinuity here before ADSYS, which is between BAGSO and ADSYS. Select delete and select the line select key next to the discontinuity to clear it out and execute this. Now it is a white line telling us that now aircraft knows how to navigate from here to there. Let's go and advance again. ADSYS, Kero, and from Kero it doesn't know where to go. And if you check the legs page, it also tells you that, yeah, I don't know how to reach to Eruda. So we need to clear that discontinuity as well. Now you see a dot line. When I execute, it will turn to white or solid white, which will tell us that now the aircraft knows what to do after Kero, which is Eruda, and then BAPTA, GART, and runway 16. So that's our arrival programmed in the FMC. The other thing is now, because I am planning to use VNAV for our arrival, we are going to select the altitude, and if we check the legs page, that will show us the restrictions, and I see a 6,000 or above restriction here at Kero. So I'm gonna aim for that to start with. We will select it to 6,000, and as you see, VALT is disappeared from the FMA, and it's showing us that we are getting close to our top of descent by flashing. Let's go to here. I think we passed it, so engage VNAV. Now VPath is now active, and it's showing it is going to descend to a selected altitude of 6,000. So now at this point we should still keep the speed close to the red tape, but come back on the throttle so that we don't overspeed, and try to stay close to the red line or red zone over there. Now we are on our descent path. This star is the VNAV star that tells you that you need to align with this star, and this needs to be at the middle to follow the V path or VNAV path that the aircraft has calculated for us. On the FMC, we are seeing 3 degrees, so that tells us that we are on a 3-degree descent path all the way to 6,000, which is our selected altitude for now. And one thing I want to point here is the next restriction is at 3,000. So if I dial the altitude selector to 3,000, or below, as you see now it's selected Alt V rather than Alt S. This tells us that now the aircraft will level off at a VNAV altitude, which is the restriction of 3,000, before continuing to descend to 1,000. So that is something you can program and let the aircraft descend on its own while respecting the altitude restrictions during your descent. I'm gonna move it back to 3,000. That was just for demonstration, and now you see it's showing altitude S or Alt S, which tells us that it is going to level off at a selected altitude of 3000 feet, because we don't have any lower restriction than 3000 on our flight plan. Alright, while the aircraft is descending, let's just take a look at some PFD and MFD options here. We have a PFD menu button up here that gives us some options to select. The format is what is displayed on the PFD. We are currently at rows format, and this button over here does the same thing and cycles through each. If I go 1, this is the P pose or present position mod. The other one is the arc, which is half of the rows, I believe, but I like to keep it at full 360-degree rows mod. I'll keep it there. Bearing source is, as the name suggests, lets you select the bearing source to be displayed on the bottom left corner of the PFD. You can select an FMS source as the bearing in terms of waypoint or the next waypoint. You can select the VOR or ADF. I'm gonna select VOR, and when we tune the ILS frequency, it will start displaying when it starts to pick the signal. Escape will get you back, and you can set a second bearing to the right hand side if you scroll down to here. Let's go back one more level. The config menu is where you can select the pressure units, hectopascals or inches mercury, switch between those two based on your location. Flight director is a V bar right now. You also have an option to use a crosshair style flight director. The meters altitude, it is off. If you turn it on, it will also display the altitude in meters, like so. And then the angle of attack display, you can leave it on if you want to have it constantly on this PFD. You can leave it off, or you can make it auto so that the aircraft decides when to display the angle of attack. Overlays is where you can set terrain or weather overlay. Traffic overlay is not working at the moment. I hope working title team can bring it to the aircraft in the future releases. References menu down below, if we go and scroll there, is where you set your V-speed references if you want to do it through here, and also set your barometric or radio altitude minimums. Our minimum for this flight, according to the approach chart, is 420 feet. I already entered it in there. I will go and select a barometric reference, which will then display the barometric minimum on the PFD. And the last menu I wanna talk about is the baro set, which lets you to set the barometric pressure through this menu. If you can also do it through this knob, that's easier, but you also have the option to set it through here as well. So that's the PFD menu options. In terms of MFD, let me get closer. We have a lower menu that we discussed that lets you switch between different display modes, and you have also some overlay options in terms of terrain and weather, which you can also select from this button as well. The other option over here is the map symbols. You can select what is displayed on the MFD map, I'm sorry. If you scroll down and select the airspaces, it will start displaying the airspaces around you. You can display low nav aids, intersections, terminal waypoints, so on and so forth. I like to keep it unclogged, so I'm not gonna select anything here. Escape will take you back. And from map symbols, the system test is not functional at the moment, so that's the only option at the lower menu. Upper menu, on the other hand, gives you options to manipulate this section of the PFD. You can turn it off, which will expand the map display. You can select the FMS text, which will display the waypoint information and the estimated time to that waypoint. and the time of arrival to that waypoint. And the checklist and passenger briefing is what we have seen in the previous videos, and the systems menu is where it displays the electrical and hydraulic systems information on this page. And I think that's all on this MFD part of things. We are descending on a VNAV path. The star is perfectly aligned at the middle, and we can now increase the speed because the red zone is disappeared. And we are about to pass 29,000, so you have to keep the speed below 305 knots, below 29,000. 305 knots is exactly, I think, Mach 0.64 when you are on Mach hold. That will aim for that speed. You have to keep it below that, but you can perfectly speed up to have higher speeds close to the red zone of the speed tape. So that's what I'm doing right now. From here, only thing left for us is to go into the FMC and go to the performance menu. And then program our approach. I'm gonna check the weather report at Dublin. It says the winds are coming from 220 at 8 knots, I'm sorry. Outside air temperature at Dublin airport is 8 degrees Celsius. We will plug that in there. And the QNH at Dublin is 1013, which is what we have here. So that's the standard pressure, interestingly enough. I'm expecting the runway to be dry. We can change that when we get close, if it's raining. On the next page, anti-ice systems. I am inclined to turn them on during landing, but I can't. Oh, okay, that is because of that 8. And it says K not active, so we'll leave it alone. Maybe we cannot select it, not sure. We will send the approach speed to the PFD by pressing the line select key next to the send, and that is our approach programmed in the FMC. So FMC is pretty much ready for our arrival and approach. Aircraft systems are already tuned or set. We are just monitoring the descent and waiting until we hit the approach waypoint or the transition, which is Kerau. Other than that, we don't have much to do in terms of planning for it, other than keeping an eye on the speed, and when passing below 10,000, slowing down below 250 knots, and keep descending all the way to 3,000 to intercept the localizer. I will probably cut the video here and bring you back when we are close to our transition waypoint and start talking about the approach and what you need to do. But before doing so, let's go down to the FMC one more time and check the tune page to see if the ILS frequency is in there. It says managed because I entered this here. Unfortunately, it didn't tune for the ILS frequency, and let me put the squawk code in there, which I forgot after starting the simulator again to record this episode. So ILS frequency I'll always check and make sure it's entered to nav1 before starting the approach. So that looks okay. We haven't received, or we are not picking any signal as of now. I will cut it here and bring you back when we are ready or get close to the transition waypoint. See you in a little bit. Welcome back, friends. We are getting close to our transition waypoint Kerau, and we started to pick the ILS signal, so we see the ghost needle on the PFD, and we are slowing down to below 250 knots because we are about to pass 10,000. So let's just go and turn on our landing lights, and then let's go through the checklist for the approach because we are about to start our approach. Landing data, we entered that, it's over here. Performance page is filled, and also under VNAV setup we set the transition altitude. So all is looking good. That is done. Let's check that item. And crew briefing, we don't have anything other than landing briefing, so we can play that through the passenger briefings. We can turn on the passenger signs, which I already did, and wrong button. So that is done. Avionics flight instruments checked. Minimums are set 420. Fuel transfer selector is off. Exterior lights are on. Ice protection systems are also on. Flaps, we will worry about that. Let's take a look at the map. So we still have some more time before we activate the approach mode, and a couple things will happen. And as you see, there is a 3000 displayed on the PFD in magenta color. We are getting down to 6000, so if we were to descend below 3000, aircraft will level off at 3000 until we clear that restriction. So let's take a look here. So we cleared that 6000, so we can go down to 3000 to capture the localizer. That's the final approach altitude, that where we expect to capture the localizer and the glide slope. So the flaps, we will set them. That is F15, that's the flaps 15 speed. We need to slow below 200 knots to extend the flaps for 15 degrees. We will assume that we will do that. Passenger briefing is complete. Seats are upright and outboard. Seat belts are secured. Passenger lights and safety buttons are on, right there. Pressurization, we don't worry about that because we cannot do anything about it. And the approach checklist is complete. So we will worry about the landing part if we can, because I don't have a co-pilot during the landing phase, or we can assume that we will drop the landing gear and we will see 3 green lights here. Flaps will be 35 degrees, speed brakes will be 0, airspeed is already calculated and sent to the PFD, so we will maintain that approach speed. Autopilot and yaw damper we will disengage, and that is the landing before landing checklist. And landing checklist, which we will probably not be able to do during landing, or we might be able to do it, so let's leave it alone. If we can't do it, we can't do it. Alright, we are getting close to 6000, and our final approach, our initial approach fix. So after Aruda, we are perfectly fine with arming the approach mode on the MCP panel, which will display the information on the FMA, and we will discuss about that. One thing to note, there is a bug. Usually when you enter the arrival, the final approach course needs to be set automatically. I heard that there was a bug that prevents that, so if that happens, we will manually enter the final approach course by the course needle. Alright, we are below 200, so we can drop 1 level of flaps, or 15 degrees of flaps, and that will get us, and we need to get to 3000 as soon as possible before Garti. Garti waypoint over here is our final approach fix, and we need to be there to capture the glide slope. We need to be at 3000. That's what I'm trying to say. And we are slowing down, which is a good sign. We are almost getting to flaps 35 speed, so let's just keep the speed there so that we don't need to drop the flaps one more time. and we are at Eruda. Let's arm the approach mode. So right now it says approach localizer 1 is armed. When we capture the localizer signal, the aircraft will switch from FMS to localizer 1, which is a radio navigation source, and the needle will turn to green. So that's what we are expecting. That will tell us that the approach is now active instead of armed. That magenta, I think we discussed, I'm not sure if we did, that is the vertical descent rate that we need to be at to hit the 3000 selected altitude perfectly when we are using VNAV. So that's the calculated path, and we need to descend at that rate, which we are. Alright, so we started to see the localizer diamond climbing up. I'm sorry, glide slope diamond is this one. Localizer diamond is to the right. It will start moving to the middle when we make this turn from Beta. So we heard the altitude call, which tells us that we are 1000 feet away from our selected altitude, and we are doing just fine. So let's slow down, because we are about to make that turn, and at Garty we will deploy the landing gear and the final level of flaps. So I'm gonna keep the aircraft close to the flaps 35 speed, which you see over here, and we are down to our selected altitude of 3000, which is a good sign. We like that. So the altitude capture flashed saying it is going to capture the altitude, and we should expect, yes, we did. So as you see, the course is showing 000. That's not right. Our final approach course according to the chart is 159, so let's just set that to 159, 150, 160, 159, and then the needle will point to the runway rather than pointing all the way to the opposite side. So that's a bug. If you encounter this, you can adjust the final approach course, look at the chart and set it through this course now. Alright, and also we captured the glide slope. As you see, we are slowing down to our final approach speed, and now I think in a matter of seconds we will be able to drop the landing gear when we hit Garty, which is our top of descent. So let's keep the speed. We don't want to stall the aircraft, because it will keep descending and it will not maintain 3000 if that happens. So we will stay around 120 knots. Or maybe more, until we hit Garty, and then we will adjust ourselves for the final approach speed. So Garty is 0.8 miles away right there, and we are 9.6 miles away from the airport, which we are not seeing right now due to the clouds, but we can now pull the throttle back and slow down to our final approach speed. Let's drop the landing gear. We should expect to see 3 green lights. 1 and 3. So the landing gear is deployed. We should switch to, which I forgot, switch to the local altimeter, which is this guy. Okay, we are good now. I forgot to switch from standard when we passed 5000 transition altitude to the local barometric pressure setting. That could be dangerous if you forgot to do that. You might end up in the ground even before you realize it. So don't do what I did. Maintain a good piloting practice and change that barometric pressure from standard to local, which is 1034. Okay, we are slowing. We don't want to slow that much. We'll keep the speed. We are at last 5 miles, which we can now drop the last level of flaps and keep the aircraft at the approach speed of, I believe, 111. So I'm trying to add some throttle to gain some speed. Also trying to see the airport behind the clouds, which I'm not seeing right now. But we are 1500 feet away from our minimum, so we should be good. Alright, so the speed is now looking good. We are around the approach speed. We don't want to we don't want to speed up more. So far everything is looking great. We are ready to land. Let's go through the checklist for landing, because we still have some time. Throttle, yeah, we will do the idle. After brakes, after touch button, we will apply brakes and extend the ground spoilers. So we are done with the checklist. We announced that we are landing to our passengers and the crew. Passing 1600. Still trying to see the airport. Is it somewhere there? Okay, that's the runway. I see poppy lights behind the clouds. We can also just get a little bit closer. It tells that we are a little bit above, which is okay. We can take control. We are about to get 1000 feet. Get to 1000 feet. When we hit 1000 feet, we will take control and try to maintain the glide slope all the way into the runway. So we'll see. We have a little bit of crosswind coming from the left at 5 knots, so that will require some correction to maintain the center line. We are now passing 1000. Autopilot is disengaged. Now it's my plane. I'm going to try to maintain the center line. We have a little bit of turbulence. Okay, poppy lights are looking good now. I'm lifting the nose slightly, watching the speed, correcting to the left, and that's all I'm doing. Alright, we will get back on track in a second. I'm just pushing the nose down. There we go. We have 2 red lights, 2 white lights, and we are correcting ourselves. I will need some rudder correction to the right slightly to correct the tail and the nose. 500 now is checked. We are at our minimums. Continue. We are landing. Now we cut the throttle. Throttles are idle. We are coming down nicely. Lift the nose, bleed some speed, and then wait for her to touch down. We touch down, speed brakes engaged, applying brakes and staying on the center line. We just shifted to the right, which I wasn't able to come over rect at the end. That would have been bad if we hit one of the wings to the ground. Alright, 50 knots, speed brakes are retracted, and we will exit the runway or vacate the runway at the end. There's an exit, I believe, and I think the parking spots are over there, so we are good. Let's get back on track, correct the view, and we can bring the flaps in now. And let's see here. Exit from here. I accidentally turned off the strobe light, which I turned back on. Okay. Runway vacated, so now we can clean the strobe and go back to taxi lights. Okay. Welcome to Dublin, guys. This was a nice flight. I hope you enjoyed. I thank you to be with me today on this flight. This is the last episode of the Citation CJ4 ground school. I hope you liked the series with this aircraft where we touched base on pretty much everything to fly this aircraft. And we will be starting to take a look at Airbus A320 with the fly-by-wire mod in the next series of the ground school. That is what I am planning. I am thinking about parking to the right, I believe. That looks like a general aviation parking area. Let's make this turn and follow the taxi marking, and let's just find the spot between those red markings on the ground, which I believe is a parking spot for GA aircraft. I think I need to open the aircraft a little bit to make the turn, slow down, and then make a full turn, apply left brake to make the turn a little bit sharper, and we should be able to park here. Maybe a little bit crooked, looks like. Let's keep turning, keep turning, keep turning, and we will just stop like this. Set the parking brake, flight director can go off, taxi light can turn off now. We'll keep the beacon light on until we turn off the engines. We can relieve the passengers now. And now what we can do is we can turn off the engines. There we are, parked at Dublin. Just a little bit crooked, but it's okay. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for being here with me, and I will see you in the next video.